I never knew the untold story of the WEST LOCH disaster would still leave me heartbroken. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The skies were heavy, warning us something was wrong. It was the kind of morning where the layers of fog rolled in thick, suffocating. My heartbeat raced like the ticking clock on the wall. My father had always whispered tales of the mysterious ships that vanished, tales that would keep me awake with the lights off. But nothing could prepare me for the haunting truth beneath the calm surface of the water. They say on that fateful day, the sea unleashed its fury. The whispers carried tales of men caught in a deadly dance with fate. And something about the way they spoke, their eyes wide with terror, made it feel more like a fever dream than reality. Swirling clouds cloaked the island, hiding the secrets of the past, masking the truth like a shroud of silence. I could almost hear the echoes of their screams resonating through the chilling wind as I stood there, staring into the depths. The disaster left scars on the people. They talked in hushed voices, shaking heads, casting uneasy glances at the shimmering water that betrayed them. It was as if the waves held a cosmic weight, carrying memories of lives interrupted, dreams washed away. My grandfather, a soldier who survived that day, never spoke about it. But I saw the shadows in his eyes, the way his hands trembled when someone brought it up. I reached the old docks one day, curiosity gnawing at me. The wood creaked beneath my feet, sending shivers through me. There were remnants of old boats, rusted and forgotten. The air was thick with salty tension. The stories of those left behind clawed at me, pulling me deeper into the mystery. I felt the chill of history wrap around my bones, pressing me to uncover the truths buried there. But just as I scratched the surface, I discovered something that would change everything. Faded documents, some hidden in a drawer, hinted at a cover-up, secrets deeply embedded in the tragedy. I felt ice in my veins. Who had silenced the truth? What if everything I knew was just a smokescreen? My heart raced. I had to know more. Then, an old fisherman appeared from nowhere, his eyes fierce and wild. "You shouldn't dig too deep, lass," he warned, voice trembling. "Some secrets are best left buried." I stared at him, my throat tight, whispers of the past ringing in my ears. Why was he so afraid? What else was there? As I turned to leave, a piercing scream shattered the silence. It resonated through my bones, pulling my attention back to the water. I gasped, heart thudding. The sea, restless and dark, seemed to pulse with anger. What lay beneath its surface? I stood frozen, absorbing the weight of the moment. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The piercing scream faded, leaving only the sound of restless waves crashing against the rocks. I took a step back, my heart still racing, the old fisherman's words echoing in my mind. Was it truly fear that anchored him to the shore, or did he know upon the very fabric of the sea the shadows that lurked just beneath? With a heavy heart, I retraced my steps from the docks, feeling as if the weight of history pressed down on me. I didn't want to let the scream go unanswered. As night fell, the island became a different creature, wrapped in darkness. The fog returned, and the moon cast eerie shadows over everything. It was enough to make you feel like the past was alive, lurking behind every tree, every corner. I returned to my grandfather's home, the old photographs surrounding me like sentinels. Each face told a story that had woven itself into my family's fabric, yet the threads of tragedy remained tangled. I found myself drawn to the old, leather-bound journal my grandfather had written in many years ago. There was a certain magic about the ink that had faded but was still legible enough to unearth some emotions trapped within those lines. As I read through his entries, a mixture of desperation and hope bubbled within me. He had written about his comrades, about the brotherhood that existed on the water. But there was something disquieting about the way he described the aftermath of that disastrous day. His words carried an undertone of guilt, which resonated with an ache I hadn't been able to grasp before. There were names he mentioned, men who had vanished without a trace, their faces lost to the depths of West Loch. With each page I turned, I sensed a growing heaviness in my heart. Was there more to their story than mere disappearance? Had my grandfather been privy to truths he had chosen to bury along with the pain? It felt like an invitation to dig deeper, to reawaken ghosts long silenced. The next day, I sought the old fisherman again, hoping he might hold more secrets. As I approached, I observed the way he gazed out at the waves, a haunted look etched on his face. There was a different energy about him this time, a flicker of vulnerability that drew me closer. "I need to know," I whispered, my own voice trembling. "What happened that day? What are the truths buried with the men who vanished?" He turned to me slowly, studying my face as if weighing the consequences of unearthing the past. After a long pause, he took a deep breath and nodded, the weight of something unspoken heavy in the air. "You don't understand, lass. The sea doesn't forget. It holds memories that can swallow souls whole. The truth is dark." Before he could continue, a young girl came rushing toward us, breathless and wide-eyed. "Gran says to come quick. It's the water, it's changed." My heart thumped at the urgency in her voice. A sense of foreboding crept in. We followed her to the shore, where the tide had receded unusually far, revealing a patch of yellow sand littered with debris. Suddenly, there, half buried in the fine grains, lay the remnants of a weathered wooden crate. My pulse quickened as I knelt beside it. What had been lost, and why had it resurfaced at that moment? The fisherman looked at me with wide eyes, the color draining from his face. "We shouldn't be here," he muttered. "This is wrong. This isn't how it should have been." I hesitated, my fingers brushing against the crude markings on the crate, feeling the energy of something ancient and unresolved pulsing beneath my skin. With one swift motion, I dug my hands into the sand, pulling the crate free from its resting place. A shudder ran through the air as I pried it open, the hinges protesting with a shriek. Inside was a tangle of rusted metal, but what caught my eyes were the remnants of a tattered journal, its last few pages partially preserved against water damage. As I leafed through it, every entry pulled me further into the lives of those who wrote them, their secrets suddenly seeping into the present. Before I could read more, however, an inexplicable chill seized the air around us, the atmosphere thickening with an unseen tension. The waves began to surge erratically, churning in a frenzy as if the sea itself was trying to reclaim what had momentarily surfaced. The young girl gasped, stepping back as an icy wind swept across the shore, and I felt the deep pull of something ominous lurking just out of sight. Then I heard the whispers, not just from the wind, but something deeper that vibrated through the very ground we stood upon. "Leave," they beckoned. Before I could react, the ground trembled, and my world seemed to tilt sideways. The realization struck me, sharp as jagged glass. I was on the brink of uncovering a truth that might have been better left buried. All around me, shadows danced dangerously close, threatening to swallow not just the past but the present and future I held dear. The old fisherman's voice cut through my racing thoughts, a warning perhaps too late. "Get back, lass. You've awakened something you can't unsee." As I stumbled back, heart pounding, I met his gaze. His fear mirrored my own, and in that moment, I understood. The hunt for truth could lead us down paths we could never return from. I had only begun to grasp the secrets of the West Loch disaster, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever lay beneath the surface was about to change everything forever. The wind howled as I reeled back, the unease settling deep in the pit of my stomach. My hands trembled over the open crate, caught in a web of curiosity and dread. The whispers intensified, intertwining with the crashing waves, an anguished chorus urging me to flee. Yet, as I locked eyes with the fisherman, I knew I couldn't turn away. My heart had already committed to this haunting journey. "Whatever is hidden here has a reason for surfacing now," I murmured, my voice barely audible amidst the chaos. The fisherman's expression darkened, eyes glistening with a fire sparked by years of buried truths and unspoken fears. Doesn't matter what it wants, lass. What matters is what it might take. The little girl, still breathless beside me, tugged at my sleeve. Please, let's go. I don't like it here. There was a quiver in her voice that sent waves of guilt crashing over me. I wanted to protect her, to shield her from the shadows that stretched ominously across the sand. But how could I walk away when the lingering specters of the past beckoned so alluringly? I inhaled deeply, searching for courage. I have to know, I whispered to the fisherman, my mind racing through the threads of my grandfather's journal. If there's something down there, something that can connect the past to the present, we have to embrace it. People deserve to know what really happened. The fisherman's gaze softened for a heartbeat, as if he were witnessing something sacred yet excruciating. Listen to me, lass, he urged, his voice low and gravelly. Every truth comes with a cost. Can you afford that? Before I could respond, the sea erupted before us, a monstrous wave slamming against the shore, sending a cascade of seawater splashing over the crate. I stumbled back, pulling the little girl to my side, shielding her with my body. The world around us vibrated violently, and as the water receded, my eyes fell on an object floating closer. A small, glimmering locket drifted against the sand, mottled with barnacles and sediment. Instinctively, I stepped forward, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. I brushed it clean and felt warmth radiate from it, a stark contrast to the chilling atmosphere surrounding us. It felt alive, an echo of the forgotten. But as I lifted it toward the fading light, the whispers morphed into a cacophony of broken sobs. I could almost see their faces, ghostly visages swirling within the tendrils of fog. Leave, do not seek. They called out, their voices layered with desperation and despair. Take it back. Drop it. The fisherman's grim shout pulled me from the reverie. But it was too late. The locket slipped from my fingers, falling open in the sand, revealing a photo of two young men, their faces framed by the laughter of youth. Something about them tugged at my heartstrings, igniting a recognition I could not place. Their eyes the same piercing blue as my own, the same unyielding resolve. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest, realizing the risk of what I had stumbled upon. Who are they? I breathed, as if speaking their names could conjure them from the depths. A ripple of silence passed through the air. The fisherman hesitated, jaw clenched as if wrestling with a painful memory. Those were my friends, lost to the sea long ago, he finally admitted, his voice hoarse with emotion. We were supposed to be together that day. They made the wrong call. Your friends? I echoed, shocked. The connection was unsettling, unfurling something deep within me, a mix of sorrow and bewilderment. What did you do? What happened? His eyes held mine, filled with unspoken secrets and haunting shadows. We made a choice, one that bound us to the wrath of the sea. His gaze shifted to the waves, and for a brief moment, I saw a younger version of him standing at the helm, smiling alongside the same boys depicted in the locket, their lives intertwined with fate and fraternity. As the truth hung heavily between us, an instinct urged me to press on. But they're not gone, are they? They didn't just vanish, I implored. If I can find them. Stop, he interrupted, his voice trembling. Some things are lost for a reason, lass. You think you want to unearth this? I hope you're prepared for the storm it will bring. Maybe the locket means they still want to be remembered, I argued back, feeling the pull of the young men, their stories echoing through the years. Maybe I can help them find peace. The fisherman shot me a warning glance. Sometimes peace is just the absence of pain. Sometimes seeking it leads to deeper scars. Just then, the waves surged again, uprooting debris from the past. The ground trembled as if the ocean itself protested against our desire to uncover. I lost my footing, and as I stumbled, the locket clicked shut, its magic slipping like sand through my fingers. The whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts, pressing down as if to suffocate. Then the water receded entirely, revealing something even more disconcerting. Two shadowy figures, emerging from the depths, their forms twisting and melding with the churning foam. I gasped, fear coursing through me as I realized they were not merely echoes of the lost. They were specters claiming their place in the present. I froze, heart pounding in my chest as chilling laughter mirthless and dark rose from the sea. The fisherman stepped back, eyes wide with terror. "No, you must go," he shouted. "They cannot be disturbed." But the figures pressed closer, and I stood paralyzed, locked in the gaze of a past I could no longer ignore, the weight of their collective sorrow pressing against me. Time seemed to stretch in that moment, reality blurring, until I could feel the tendrils of the haunting past wrapping around my soul, and with a heart-wrenching scream that pierced the heavens, the shadows surged forward, igniting a surge of panic within me. I was drawn into the depths, not just of the sea but of a destiny intertwined with those I dared not forget. The storm was just beginning, and I had unwittingly awakened what was never meant to resurface. The storm rolled in swiftly, an unwelcome shroud of darkness engulfing the fading light. The air crackled with tension, each gust of wind weaving through the outlines of figures that did not belong to this world. Fear gripped my chest, a vice tightening with every wave that crashed, echoing their lament, the sorrow of lives lost, perhaps, but also a plea for remembrance. "No, this isn't happening," I gasped, my mind struggling to process the gathering shadows. I felt the little girl at my side clutch my hand, her grip tighter than before, a lifeline in this maelstrom of dread and despair. "Please, say something," she whimpered, eyes wide with terror as the figures shimmered closer, barely distinguishable from the froth of the tide. The echoes of laughter twisted into something more sinister, mingling with stifled cries that clawed at the edges of my sanity. The fisherman gripped my shoulder, shaking me slightly to break the spell that the sea had cast over me. "We need to leave. They cannot be allowed to take you." His voice was laced with urgency, pulling me from the brink of that abyss. But the compulsion to understand, to uncover the truth, pulsed within me like a second heartbeat. "No, wait," I cried out, finding my voice amidst the chaos. The shadows paused, hovering as if contemplating my defiance. "If you're here, if you're reaching for something, what do you want?" A moment stretched, suspended in time, and in that space it felt as if the world around us drew a breath. The figures shifted slightly, their outlines becoming more defined, revealing faces that were both hauntingly familiar and painfully unknown. "Help us," a voice echoed, resonating from the very depths of the sea, a whisper wrapping around my consciousness. "We seek the truth." "What truth?" I dared to ask, desperate for clarity amid the anxiety swirling in my heart. Suddenly, the whispers coalesced, intertwining with the wind, their urgency spiraling until I felt the weight of their grief crashing over me like unrelenting waves. "The truth of the choice that led to our end," they lamented. I turned to the fisherman, his face now drawn tight with the burdens of his past. "What happened, really? What choice was made?" But before he could respond, the ground beneath us trembled anew, a stark reminder that the past was not finished with us yet. A powerful swell surged forward, slashing the air with salty spray, and I stumbled backward, nearly losing my footing as the shadows threatened to recoil. "You're being too reckless," he implored, desperation tightening his tone. "You can't bargain with ghosts." "But I can't ignore them," I protested, feeling a strange kinship with these lingering spirits, lost souls tethered to a narrative that had slipped through the cracks of time. "If their story goes untold, they will never find peace." "I can't walk away." As the tension swelled, the figures whispered again, begging in unison. "Our story is incomplete." Realization struck me like a thunderbolt, hot and cold at once. This wasn't just about uncovering a forgotten narrative, it was about binding their souls to the earth where the truth lay buried. "I will find the truth," I vowed, voice rising above the gusting wind. "But I need to know first what you are hiding, what you have buried beneath the waves." Did I end that moment of vulnerability? A flicker of hope glimmered within the shadows. "We fear exposure," they confessed softly, voices tinged with an ancient sorrow. "The shame of our choices binds us to the depths. But if we are to be free, you must stand fearless against the storm." The fisherman looked between me and the shadows, uncertainty mounting in his eyes. "You understand what you're inviting, lass? They carry the weight of their actions, and if you dig into their past, you may uncover darkness even you cannot bear." His concern throbbed in the air as I weighed my options, but the urgency of the figures pressed me forward. "I can take it," I whispered, though doubt clawed at my heart. "I owe it to them and to myself." Then the shadows recoiled as the tide surged once more, embracing their forms in a tumult of white foam. "Then listen closely," the echo intoned, sounding almost like a dirge. "The truth lies at the end of a heart that dared to believe that as the foam swallowed their outlines, my heart ground to a halt, and the world around me spun." In the distance, flashes of lightning stitched together the sky, illuminating the coastline with eerie clarity. But before I could respond, an unforeseen crash boomed over the tumult echoes of destruction from behind us, a warning bell resounding through the tempest. The fisherman turned, horror etched into every line on his face. "We're not alone," he gasped. The air thickened as a familiar figure emerged from the shadows of the cove, one I had never expected to see again, but somehow felt deeply connected to the spirit of my grandfather, illuminated against the dark chaos. "Come back," he beckoned, the tremor in his voice cutting through the tempest. "You are not prepared for what lies within the heart of the storm." My heart raced, pumping hope and fear in equal measures. The locket now held weight beyond the trinket it had once seemed. It was a key to a history that knew no bounds. As I locked eyes with my grandfather, an overwhelming wave of love surged through me. I was teetering on the edge of an abyss, yet something in that gaze anchored me, whispering against the howling chaos that it was not too late to turn back. But in that moment of indecision, the storm escalated, and I was left suspended, caught between the past and my decision to face the uncertain future before me. And somewhere in that chaos, the hidden truths began to tear loose from the depths like wild horses, charging toward their reckoning with the ground trembling beneath me. I felt only one thing was certain. The journey was far from over, and the reckoning was about to unfold. The air crackled with tension, a kaleidoscope of dread and yearning, as the shadows slowly coalesced around me. The storm intensified, gusts of wind thrusting salty rain across my face. Yet it felt like a feeble attempt to drown out the cacophony of voices rising from the ocean's depths. My grandfather's figure flickered like a candle in the wind, wavering but ever present. His eyes deep wells of concern swirling with unspoken truths. "Please," I implored, my voice rising against nature's fury. "Tell me what I need to know." The fisherman remained rooted beside me, caught between the two realms. His breath hitched as he trembled with fear for my safety and a profound sorrow that embedded his very spirit. "Follow the echoes, my dear," my grandfather urged, his once familiar face now shrouded in grief. "But take heed, some truths are heavy burdens. Do not let them shatter who you are." The words resonated within me like reverberations from a distant bellin invitation. Yes, but one tinged with a warning. I nodded, steeling myself against the encroaching shadows, daring to take a step closer to the cove where their mournful wails seemed most palpable. As I approached, a sudden gust of wind swept through, unearthing memories. The happy, sun-drenched images of beach days faded into green-hued remnants of an era long past. The laughter of children morphed into cries, twisting like ghosts yearning for light. With every step, time unraveled, unearthing echoes of betrayal laced with loss, a darkness clinging to the walls of the cove. "Not all who are lost wander," the figures murmured. Their voices merged, lapping at my consciousness, giving shape to memories never lived. "Some are tethered to their choices, their legacies forever entwined with pain." A sudden wave crashed close by, the ocean's roar threatening to swallow me whole. Within the chaos, I could see the flickering images of a ship adrift, its hull torn asunder, rising and falling with the tide of history. The West Loch disaster unfolded before me, raw and pulsing, each heartbeat a specter of those who had once called the ship home. I gasped, stepping back as new figures emerged, captains who faced indignant seas, crew members whose faces blazed with determination. And while their hopes sailed into the horizon, they were intercepted by fate, caught in the storm of calamity. "They were never to blame," I whispered, instinctively knowing that this wasn't merely about uncovering their mistakes. It was about rendering their stories into the light. "See their courage," the shadows beckoned, illuminating glimmers of silver amid the stormy dusk. "Their dreams were drowned, but their truths remain, waiting for someone to understand." Just as the realization began to dawn, a thunderous roar erupted from the ocean, snapping me back into the present. Stricken with fear, I turned to the fishermen. What if exposing them harms their memories? What if it condemns their spirits? Before he could answer, a bolt of lightning split the sky, illuminating figures closer now, spirits of the fallen emerging, shimmering in the chaotic tempest. Their faces echoed hope and despair, intertwining like different threads in a fragile tapestry. Yet, amid this chaos, a moment of warmth radiated through my heart as one friendly spirit reached out, a gesture of kindness amid the confrontation. "You are not alone," she spoke, her voice soothing. "For every shadow cast, there is a flame still burning, willing to guide you through the darkness." My pulse quickened in response to her touch. She was a beacon, pulling me from my fears as embers of hope danced within me. A smile broke through the storm. Here was a chance to weave together a narrative of sorrow and resilience, one that could lift the weight off their spirits. Crackling with newfound determination, I turned back to the spectral figures, taking a stand against the storm tearing at my resolve. "I will not turn away," I declared, voice rising above the clamor. "I will tell your stories and embrace your truth, regardless of the pain it may uncover. You deserve to be remembered not for the tragedy that befell you, but for the courage you showed in the face of it." In that charged moment, the storm stilled. The winds quieted, as if the ocean itself paused to listen. But within that silence, I felt a surge of power coursing through both the living and the lost. Then, just as quickly, the hurricane returned, battering me with renewed fervor. The ancestral ties that bound the fallen consumed me, as visions of their fates clashed and intertwined before collapsing into a horrifying kaleidoscope of loss. I struggled to keep my footing, overwhelmed by the weight of their regrets and burdens. "Oh," I gasped, and at that moment, all the lights flickered, threatening to fade into darkness. "You don't have to carry this any longer. Together we can forge a new path." And that's when the looking glass of realization shattered. The weight of their suffering pressed upon me like a vice, drawing my breath deeper. "I can't bear this alone," I cried out to my grandfather, frantic. "What do I do? How can I help?" But as I turned toward him, the darkness shifted, and I realized he was gone, just a flicker of light snuffed out in the storm. "You must remember," whispered the ancient voices, rising to a crescendo as thunder shattered the sky. "This journey is yours to confront, for in each story lies the key to their liberation." A maelstrom of realization swirled around me. This was no ordinary storm. I was caught in the tempest of memory and legacy, and the weight of their unshared burdens intertwined with my very identity. I felt their pain vibrating within me like a dark symphony, ever threatening to unearth fully. My heart thundered, a battle of emotions waging inside me. I could not fight alone anymore. I was standing on the precipice of revelation, and the only way forward was through the storm that awaited meth shattered reality, standing between lost souls and their peace, and my own heart still tethered to the echoes of their truth. And as a roar of thunder reverberated through the night, I knew one thing for certain. I would have to face the storm head-on and confront the shadows that lay in waiting, because the untold story of the WEST LOCH disaster was just beginning to unfold, and it would take more than courage to piece together the shattered fragments. The world around me morphed into a tempest of confusion, the storm raging both within and without. Each gust of wind brought with it cries of the lost, their mournful wails piercing through the noise of thunder. I staggered back, clutching my chest as if to contain the overwhelming tide of emotions that threatened to drown me. "Breathe," I whispered to myself, as the ancestral echoes rattled through me, heavier than anything I had ever felt before. Just as the chaotic forces converged, the face of the kind spirit flickered back to me, her gentle smile illuminating the darkness. "You are stronger than you know," she reassured, her voice a soft caress against the storm. But how could I be strong? With every breath I drew, I felt the burden of their stories, the longing, the regret, the unresolved pain. They had all loved and lost. They were tethered to their choices, and now I too became part of that weighty legacy. "I need guidance," I whispered, desperately searching for some thread of clarity that would lead me out of this labyrinth of sorrow. As the ghosts hovered around me, I reached out instinctively, yearning to connect, My fingers felt a cool breeze as they skimmed through a figurine older man with sorrowful eyes, unmistakably bearing a resemblance to my granddad. His shoulders slumped under the weight of unfulfilled promises, and it was then I realized this was another layer of understanding. "Grandfather?" I whispered, throat tight with emotion. The spirit's gaze met mine, and I felt an unspoken connection bloom between us, the comfort of recognition and the piercing agony of unresolved history. "Find the truth," he urged, his voice a low murmur against the raging winds. "Your pain is their pain. To share their burden is to honor their spirit." But even as his words resonated within me, a fresh wave of doubt crashed violently against my heart. What of the truths I unearth? What if it tarnishes their memory? What if it leads to more suffering for the living? My voice trembled, filled with the weight of responsibility that had suddenly settled uninvited upon my shoulders. The storm lashed at the cove, echoing my fears with violent gusts. But there it was, Agarine, a flicker of warmth among the chaos. That kind spirit, faint yet resolute. She leaned closer until she was beside me, her presence becoming a soothing balm against the relentless turmoil. To confront the storm requires a heavy heart but an unwavering spirit. Together, we shall mend what has been broken. The words rippled through the air, igniting hope in the darkest corners of my mind. Together, but the pang of isolation clenched around my heart. I felt utterly alone, trapped between the unresolved cries of the departed and the looming shadows that threatened my very existence. I stumbled back toward the water's edge, the waves crashing like drums beneath my feet. Memories, once nebulous and fully enigmatic, now surged for the flood of images awash with color and life. There were faces, children playing on the deck, joyous laughter ringing out, and there the anticipation of adventure written across their expressions. I gasped. They were just like me. An intimate connection blossomed within. These were people who had dreams, ambitions, and loved ones who awaited their return. They were ripped from life at the cusp of their journeys, pressing against the veil of time, their souls caught between past and present. The wind howled louder, hurricane force battering me down. But in that moment of clarity, I found a small grounding. I could turn this all around. "I will share your stories," I vowed, intensity igniting my words like fire. "I will bear the burden of your truths, not just for you but for the living who are haunted by your absence." The storm stilled, a peculiar hush settling as if the universe had paused to capture my resolution. But as I scrutinized the faces that surrounded me, a sudden chill scraped against my skin. Confusion rippled through the ethereal crowd, and the kind spirit's comforting presence began to fade. "No!" I shouted, reaching out to clasp her hand, but she turned away, her form dissipating into the very air around me. "Wait, don't leave me." And then, like a sudden crack in reality, I felt a deep rustling, no longer gentle but jagged, shattering the tranquility I had just grasped. New figures emerged from the shadows, sinister and clamorous, their faces twisted in torment. "You think you can just tell our stories?" they taunted, voices sharp and accusatory. "Do you even know the whole truth?" Panic clutched at my throat as their collective energy surged toward me, a tidal wave of anguish set to overwhelm. I turned to confront my brethren of lost souls, desperately seeking the courage I felt only moments before. "I want to help," I pleaded, feeling the icy grip of despair twist around my heart. A low rumble echoed from the ocean, a promise that their revelations would come at a cost, binding me deeper into their narrative. Just as I braced myself for what was to unfold, a blinding flash of lightning illuminated the horizon, ripping through the chaos, revealing a submerged yet familiar shape beneath the waves. Another ship, shadowed and silent. "Your truth lies there." A voice beckoned, this time from the depths, stone-chilled and potent. "Delve deep, but know that discovery often costs more than you expect." My heart raced. The profound connection I felt with the spirits strained against the hidden tides of their stories yet to be told. Swallowed by both dread and hope, I stood at the edge of the abyss, staring into the heart of the storm that would unravel and bind us all. With shaky resolve, I took a deep breath, ready to plunge into the darkness and face whatever awaited me beneath the surface. As I stepped forward, I felt new tendrils entwining around my heart and spirit, pushing me toward a reality yet unseen, grasping at the promise of uncovering truths that might lead to liberation or greater sorrow. And with the world around me swirling into chaos, I plunged into the roiling sea of the unknown, prepared to confront the tempestuous currents that would either shatter or redefine me. The echoes of generations beckoned me deeper, and as the shadows surrounded me, I knew this was but the beginning of a harrowing revelation, a tale crafted in both sorrow and strength. The frigid water enveloped me, pulling me under and silencing the tempest above. Time lost all meaning as I drifted deeper into the abyss, the liquid darkness pressing against me like the weight of unseen eyes. Panic surged momentarily, but the haunting cries of the spirits drove me forward. There was no turning back now. As I swam further into the cold depths, spectral silhouettes began to coalesce around me, faces shimmering with longing, their expressions a mixture of hope and despair. They reached out with translucent hands, urging me to listento hear the echoes of their terrible fate. I could almost feel the tendrils of their stories intertwining with my own, weaving a tapestry of lives interrupted. A sudden displacement of water startled me, and I turned to see the familiar face of the kind spirit. "You must remain focused," she urged, her voice barely a whisper amid the surrounding currents. "Each truth you uncover brings you closer to understanding the whole." "Understanding what?" I gasped, the cold threatening to siphon away my breath. What truth could possibly redeem what was lost? She hesitated, seemed to gather the weight of her thoughts. "Redemption is not always about absolution," she said slowly, currents swirling around her words. "Sometimes, it's simply a way to honor those who never returned, to allow their voices to be heard once more." Before I could respond, the pressure from the water pressed down harder, forcing me to confront the disembodied spirits. Their faces sharpened in the dim glow of an ethereal light as they encircled me. "Who will tell our stories?" A voice boomed, resonating through the water like a thunderous echo. It belonged to the man whose resemblance to my grandfather had disturbed me. "Do you even care about the truth? Or are you only here for your own resolution?" "I care," I implored, desperation spilling from my lips, the weight of their judgment suffocating. "I've lost too. I came to listen, to learn to carry your memories loud enough for the world to hear. Then let us show you." The spirit raised a hand, and the water swirled, revealing a scene from the pasta bustling shore, people brimming with anticipation as they prepared for the voyage ahead. The joy on their faces was palpable. Suddenly, the joy plummeted, replaced by sheer terror as ominous clouds gathered and the wind howled like a banshee announcing fate's cruel intent. The vision dissipated as quickly as it formed, swirling into nothingness as the specters drew closer, their desperation grasping me like an iron chain. "You see, we were not just a name on a list. We were lives, hopes, dreams. Only the truth can set us free. But can you bear it?" The kindness I had associated with the spirit began to ripple with an unsettling undercurrent. "Yes," I gasped, but even I could hear the tremor in my voice. "But what if it destroys you?" The voice interrupted, seizing my heart with icy claws. "What if every revelation pulls you further from the living?" The thought weighed heavily upon me, thoughts spiraling into uncertainty. Could I handle what these shadows carried? Would my connection put my own life in jeopardy? I didn't have answers, and yet, I felt ignited, as if the depths of my own heart contained the embers needed to ignite their stories. Just then, a jolt surged through me, the waters shifting as though responding to some dormant energy. I felt myself being swept back toward an eerie fragment of reality. The looming silhouette of the ship appeared once more, transformed into something grotesque and disfigured. Its rot had been etched by time, but the whispers of the past still clung to its hull, imploring me to delve deeper. In that moment, a sense of clarity ignited like a flint striking against steel. "I must go aboard," I rasped, pulling resistance against the currents that sought to sidetrack me. Each stroke felt like pushing against a wall of overwhelming dread, but somehow, the weight of my determination shoved the tide aside. As I broke the surface again, the ship loomed overhead, a specter against the bleak sky. My heart thundered in anticipation, each beat urging me forward. But as I pulled myself onto the ship's desolate deck, my senses turned traitor, overwhelmed by an overwhelming sense of disappointment. crumbled letters scattered like autumn leaves across the floor. A diary, weathered and fragile, caught my eye, and as I approached, a sudden understanding gripped my heart. These were not just abandoned belongings. They were pieces of a person, of 1,000 persons, each with their own stories waiting to be told. But as I reached for the diary, a tremor ran through the ship. Shadows whipped around me, their voices rising in a cacophony, the anguish cloaking my thoughts. Leave. It's too late for us. Do not tarnish what is left. And oh, I cried out, my voice struggling against the swell of despair. You deserve to be remembered. In that instant, the ship lurched violently, dislodging a heavy beam that creaked ominously overhead. I ducked just in time, but the hairs on my neck prickled. Something was watching, waiting to retain its secrets even in destruction. Every instinct seized. There was something malevolent bound to this ship, something that did not wish for me to witness its truth. And then, amid the storm, the half-formed shapes loomed larger. A dark mass on the horizon, not just memories but figures of those who had suffered. Their faces twisted not in anger but desperate for release. Reality warped beneath my feet, and I was forced to confront the bitter truth. I was stepping not just into their memories, but something more horrifyingly alive, more sinister than mere echoes of the drowned. As another anguished cry tore through the air, my heart sank. The thrill of discovery was now outweighed by the suffocating fear of becoming one of their own. Turning to flee, I felt the creeping darkness grasping at my ankles. Desperate to drag me under, there was more to lose, more than I could have anticipated. That I gripped the railing, letting the icy grip of terror fuel my resolve. Over the unseen abyss, shadows promised answers wrapped in pain. A haunting reality awaited me at the precipice. Keep going. A distant voice licked at my thoughts, the kind spirit's warmth dulled by the encroaching gloom. You must unravel the pain. Only then can they find peace. With time slipping away, I peered into the depths, ready to confront the unknown once more. The clear desire to honor their legacy coalesced inside me, igniting a strange, fierce courage as I prepared to share both their suffering and their joys. But at what cost? As I approached the maw of their anguish, the truth awaited, cloaked in shadows and shaped by loss, riskier than any tale I had ever dared to uncover. With every heartbeat, the stakes climbed higher, merging fear, hope, and despair into a pulse that echoed through the waters, gently calling me towards my fate I had yet to fully comprehend, and yet could not resist. With a final breath, I stepped forward into the darkness, ready to risk everything for their story and for my own. The moment my foot sank into the depths, darkness swallowed me whole, wrapping me in an impenetrable shroud. Weaving through the murky waters, whispers brushed against my skin like a lover's caress, sending shivers coursing through my body. I was enveloped by the weight of the past, and the cold became a memory of its own, an echo of the countless souls that had passed before me. What lay beneath was more than mere memories. It felt alive, pulsating with energy, a collage of sorrow and longing. Flickers of light danced around me, illuminating forgotten relics of a time long gone, rusted belongings that whispered tales once vibrant, now faded like jagged scars on an unseen canvas. Suddenly, the screams erupted again, the cries of the restless trapped in a world between. They melded together, swirling, hungry for acknowledgement. Fear clawed at my throat, but there was no turning back. Their anguish demanded a witness. Each stroke through the cold was like swimming through molasses. The spirit's frantic energy surrounded me. Can you hear us? They implored, the collective voice resonating within me. Can you feel? Tell me what you want. I am listening, I screamed, the words barely escaping my lips as the shadows thickened around me. My heart thundered, each beat a desperate plea to connect, to hold their memories as they were meant to be held, not forgotten. Not ignored. That a shimmering vision materialized before my eyes, a woman kneeling on that same desolate ship, her fingers clutching a delicate silver locket, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her lips moved, forming silent words that curled around me like tendrils of smoke. I felt her sorrow, her wish for her child to be free of the pain wrought by loss. Your son was taken, she whispered through the chasm of time, her sorrow rolling over me like a wave. He was not just another soul. Hiwazumi-san, my light my heart constricted. The weight of her grief pressed against me, the connection forging a bond that took my breath away. I tried to reach for her, but she dissolved into a cascade of shadows, leaving an echo of despair lingering in her wake. Remember me, she implored, as thoughts of her faded into nothingness. Something within me stirred a flicker of determination amidst the suffocating darkness. I could not let her memory slip away like so many before. I will remember you, I vowed, the resolve filling my veins with warmth. Your story will not be lost. But in my declaration a ripple of suspicion surged through the water, shaking my confidence. You think you can save us? You think your promise matters? The voice was nasally and mocking, a spirit resonating with skepticism rather than grief. More lies, another murmured, their words hot against the chill. You cannot save what is already lost, Ano. I countered. I am here to share your truth, to fight for each of you. Your stories are not forfeit. They are to be told. Yet as I proclaimed my intentions, the swirling shadows coalescing around me began to morph into grotesque figures, twisted reflections of their tragic end. They do not understand. These shadows hissed, flickering like flames just out of reach. They will cast us aside, forget us again. We are ashes now, and we will remain so. Desperation clawed at me. I promise, I will make it right. I won't let the world forget your pain, your joy, your existence. As my words floated into the currents, something unexpected happened. A flicker of light pulsed within the darkness, a smile, a hint of warmth, a glimmer of hope began to shimmer through the shadows around me. One by one, their forms shimmered, appearing as gentle echoes rather than monstrous apparitions. Are you willing to suffer for us? The kind spirit from before materialized once more, her expression tender yet grave. It's not just the good memories that must be honored. It's all that we were. I will face whatever I must, I promised. Every tear, every sorrow, I will bear them for you. A hush fell over the water, and I felt the energy shift. Flickers of recognition glimmered in the spectral forms swarming me. They were wrapping their ethereal arms around my heart, seeking solace in the promises I had made. But as I opened the door to their truth, I felt a dreadful shadow lurking at the edge of the light, an ominous presence that had been awakened by my vow. Just then, a powerful current surged beneath me, propelling me toward the heart of it all. Do you dare go deeper? The shadows taunted, spiraling around me like a tempest. Can you face the truth that lies ahead? The waters around me began to churn, swirling into a maelstrom of memories, joy so radiant it hurt alongside the darkest grief. I felt vulnerable, exposed, yet emboldened, knowing every piece of their truth would now test my spirit as the darkness threatened to consume me. The kind spirit stood firm, her gaze unwavering. Follow me, she urged, as the shadowy vortex grew louder, more chaotic. With uncertainty swirling in my chest, I steadied myself and plunged forward. The waves roared around me, fierce and unyielding, but I clung to the light, the spirit's hope illuminating the path. Then came the space between breaths, the threshold of what once was and what awaited my arrival. A sudden, searing pain that tore through me, a vision unseen flooding my mind. I found myself face to face with another figure, one cloaked in shadows but unmistakably familiar. Why did you come? The figure spoke, the weight of sorrow anchoring their voice. You cannot change the past. In trying to save us, you may lose yourself instead. Panic rose like a tide within me, threatening to drown out the glimmer of hope. I knew this figure, not just from the shadows. It was someone from my own life, someone I thought I had lost for, a voice from the abyss calling me back as the darkness stirred once more. In that moment, I realized I was not just entwined with the souls of the ship. I was perched on the precipice of my own salvation or damnation. Will you turn back? They whispered, the shadows blurring their face. Or will you risk everything to save Yuzal of us? The question ricocheted through me, gnawing at the very core of my being. Hope wrapped around me like a shield, yet the threat of despair loomed, threatening to pull me under. Because in your quest for truth, you may uncover far more than you bargained for, they warned, as I grasped for answers amid the chaos. And in the overwhelming darkness of my choices, Fate hung suspended like 1,000 stories, all interwoven, each heartbeat echoing in protest. What would I uncover, and at what cost? The call of their histories weighed heavily upon me. Yet intertwined was my own, a collision of destinies as uncertain as the inky blackness surrounding me. The journey toward their salvation was fraught with peril, a path that could shatter me entirely. As I stood on the edge of uncertainty, the question hung heavy in the air: was I prepared to plunge into the depths of grief for the sake of the lost? Or would I let their cries drown in the silence of oblivion? In that defining instant, my answer came to me, fierce and unyielding. Not just for the sake of those lost aboard the ship, but for the sake of my own story. I took a deep breath and plunged into the watery depths again, ready to confront the darkness, ready to risk it all. A decision had been made, and the light flickered before me, promising that even amidst the shadows, hope could still flourish if only I dared to believe. The weight of the darkness pressed against me as I submerged into the depths, my pulse a steady drumbeat of determination. It felt as if I was no longer alone. Each stroke of my arms propelled me through the murky waters, now a conduit between past and present. Spirits whispered around me, their voices merging into a haunting symphony, pained, yet somehow harmonious. With every flicker of light that pierced through the shadows, I envisioned the stories I had yet to tell. I could almost hear their laughter, the joy I wished to amplify, even as it mingled with the aching sorrow that tangled alongside. Yet, I was acutely aware of the profound cost that lay ahead, a cost not just to me, but to those who had been lost. The spirit who had offered me hope swirled alongside me, her tendrils of light holding my fear at bay. "Stay close," she urged, her voice soothing amidst the chaos, "for you will need to lean on their strength to navigate the truths ahead. The past holds power, but so does the love behind it." As we journeyed deeper, the current shifted again, propelling me toward a vast expanse of darkness I hadn't expected. A singular figure emerged from the depths, shimmering like a star plummeting from the heavens, yet tethered by something heavier than the gossamer of light. I squinted through the shadows, my heart racing as I approached him, recognition crashing over me like a wave. "Tom," I gasped, disbelief anchoring me for a moment. He looked the same as I remembered, yet burdened with an unseen weight. His eyes flickered with a painful awareness, reflecting a crystal-clear grief that pierced through my chest. "Why have you come here?" he whispered, as if the words themselves were burdens too great to carry. "You shouldn't have followed me into the darkness." "I had to," I breathed, my spirit aflame with urgency. "I'm here to help to honor the stories of those lost, including yours." I can. His brow furrowed, and his mouth pressed into a thin line. "You can't save them. They are settled into their fate, just as I am. And in doing so, you risk losing everything." "Tom," I pleaded, "their stories matter. Your story matters. I refuse to let any of you fade into nothingness." The solemn weight of his gaze held me captive, a flicker of hope battling against despair. "But who will save you?" he asked, his voice cracking with the strain of his reality. "In wrestling with the darkness for their memories, do you not risk your own?" The tempest surged around us, angry and chaotic, the shadows swirling as if sensing our confrontation. The other spirits murmured, their collective energy a whispering current, intertwining around my heart like vines growing in the cracks of despair. "I am not afraid," I stated strongly, though my resolve trembled at the core. "I can't allow their dreams to dissipate. The world must know what happened here, who they were, what they lost." He stepped closer, the light from the spirit illuminating his features, casting away some of the shadows. "But it's not merely about them, is it? You're trying to face your own ghosts. The ones you lost, the ones who haunt you still." Those words struck like lightning, electrifying every nerve, forcing me to confront the truth I had tried so hard to suppress. The ache in my chest blossomed, sharp and raw, cutting through lies I had woven to shield myself. My voice faltered, struggling against the tide of grief that threatened to pull me under. Images of laughter mingled with pain, of unfulfilled promises, of time lost. "Answer me this. If you succeed, if you manage to honor them, what will you face in return?" Tom pressed, his presence strong yet fragile, like a wavering flame. "They'll face whatever it takes," I declared fiercely, each syllable a lifeline. "Not just for you, for them, but for the part of me that was lost. Our stories are woven together, and I will not let them be forgotten. The maelstrom around us quieted, each spirit falling silent, absorbing my words. The shadows receded slightly, allowing a flicker of light to break through. Yet as I breathed in that moment of solace, I felt a cruel pull at my chorea shift in the air, too palpable to ignore. To be careful what you wish for, Tom cautioned softly, but there was no time to savor that warning. The shadows roared back to life, swirling around Tom, pulling him deeper into the abyss. Tom, no, I cried, reaching out, desperation consuming me, but the darkness wrapped around him like a vice, refusing to let go. In that heart-wrenching moment, the shadows turned as if to mock me, a binding force that threatened to swallow my resolve. I can't lose you again, I screamed, but his presence thinned as the shadows feasted upon him, pulling him into the depths. Face the truth. His voice echoed one last time, enveloped by the engulfing dark. With a fierce surge of emotion, I tore through the tidal waves of despair, driving toward the heart of the chaos where Tom had vanished. A tremor ran through the waters, vibrating with the fervor of forgotten tales, of voices wrapped in grief and joy. The room filled with anguished cries, familiar yet fleeting, cascading around me in a haunting ballet. As I dived deeper, something new emerged, a revelation that crashed into me with the force of a storm. Embrace their stories, the kind spirit urged, now back at my side, her light brighter than ever before. Every moment, every single memory is a key to this darkness. You cannot save them all, but you can honor them, and in doing so, you might find your own liberation. The shadows echoed around me, twisting and turning as if wrestling to silence her words, but I fought against the tide, propelled forward by a newfound hope. As the waters closed in around me, I grasped for the memories, desperate to hold on to every story still unspoken. They swirled like sparkling gems, binding me to the narrative that was larger than any single life. Give me strength. I will tell your tales, I cried, my voice fierce and determined, rebounding against the walls of nothingness. Yet even as I yelled, dread inched along my spine, refusing to relinquish its grip. What lay ahead, what I was about to discover, was still clouded in uncertainty, but as the darkness deepened and twisted, I sensed a presence lurking, waiting for me to cross a threshold I hadn't foreseen. And I knew this was only the beginning of unraveling truths I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The shadows pressed closer, daring me to understand. I had waded into waters treacherous and profound, and while I might seek to heal others, my own scars remained laid bare, waiting for resolution. The darkness shimmered, taunting me with the understanding that within these depths lay both devastation and freedom, a terrifying duality I could no longer deny. As I prepared to embrace my fate, a final question lingered like smoke in the air. How deep would the cost of truth truly go? The darkness enveloped me, a tangible entity of sorrow and despair. But just as fear threatened to consume my heart, an unexpected warmth bloomed within. The kind spirit stood at my side, her gentle light a beacon in the tumultuous blackness. You are not alone, she whispered, her voice a melody that wove through the chaos. Together we will piece together their stories, and through them, you will find your own salvation. My breath hitched, the realization settling deep in my bones. These spirits were not mere echoes of history. They were guardians holding the weight of lives lived, dreams unfulfilled, and moments that deserve remembrance. Determined, I pushed against the shadows, hesitant yet empowered by the knowledge that honoring them would lead me back to myself. As I submerged deeper, the pressure intensified. Images flickered around, ghostly manifestations of laughter frozen in time, sunlight glinting off wooden decks, families embracing before the voyage ahead. They were alive, vibrant, and brimming with hope. My heart swelled with sorrow for what was lost, but also with fierce resolve. You are more than a memory, I cried out, my voice fighting the overwhelming tide. Your stories matter. The spectral figures began to swirl closer, faces bathed in a soft glow as they interpreted my plea. Will you truly carry our tales? They chorused, their voices a haunting yet hopeful symphony against the wind and waves. Can you bear the weight of our truth? I will, I declared with all the strength I could muster, realizing that this was more than just a promise to them. It was a reclamation of my own voice, a vow that the echoes of their lives would not be lost in the abyss of time. I will shout your names until my last breath. Together, we can rise through the storm. As those affirmations spilled from my lips, a tempest swelled around me with renewed vigor, the shadows shifting in a dance that felt both menacing and inviting. I felt the threads of their stories knit themselves around me, binding me to their collective grief and joy. Tell us of our lives, they urged, voices mingling into a melodic harmony that filled the dark sea with light. A pulse of energy surged through me, awakening a deeper understanding. You were brothers, sisters, fathers, and mothers, I vowed, each shipwrecked by a reality unkind. The memories surged forward like an oh-so-familiar tide, washing over me until I could feel each life pulse against my own heart. You were loved. Images cascaded before my eyes, a young boy on his father's shoulders, a young woman smiling on deck, a soldier waving goodbye. Their lives, lived and breathed, were tethered to the stories lost beneath the waves. I could feel their warmth, the energy of lives filled with dreams, laughter, love, and intense sorrow. As I catalogued each moment, it became clear. I was not just surviving in this shadowed realm. I was slowly reclaiming the narratives of those who hadn't had the chance to speak. Suddenly, dark currents roiled and thrashed around me, furious. An anguished scream echoed through the waters. The shadows, threatened by the act of reclamation, recoiled, desperate to silence me. Dare you disturb the stillness? A voice roared, the sonorous weight of it churning through the depths. You will unravel everything. Fear clawed at my stomach, yet instead of retreating, I stood steadfast, feeling an unfamiliar strength welling up inside me. I have nothing to fear, I called into the void. I want to honor your stories, even if it costs me everything. The resolve reverberated through the water, empowering the spirits around me. With those words, the tide shifted. The fierce resistance softened, and the darkness began to retract, revealing fragments of the ship, the vessel that had bound them all, yellowed fragments of newspapers and letters floating alongside my heart's heavy thundering. The ship wasn't just a relic. It was a repository of memories, artifacts of lives once vibrantly lived. Emboldened, I reached out and grasped a half-buried piece of paper, its edge curling with time. I drew it close, and as I unfolded it, the words inside coalesced back into life, spilling tales of camaraderie, loss, love, and the echoes of a life that had been tethered to the unforgiving sea. I will tell your truths, I promised once more, my heart racing with each verse. I will share the beauty behind your tragedies even if I have to stand against the storms alone. Awash in the power of my words, I could feel them with me, the initial fear of the depths giving way to a raw and profound courage. The spirits of those lost drew close, leaning into me, infusing me with strength as I became the vessel of their memories, ready to bring their stories into a world that desperately needed to remember. And then, a brilliant light erupted, emanating from their hearts and filling the dark waters around us. The storm that raged above stilled as the depths transformed into a shimmering tapestry of memories, vibrant and alive. I felt lighter, as if all the burdens I had carried were shared, exchanged for the hope of a new dawn. I could gaze into the spirit's eyes and see them transform, eat a mixture of sadness and relief, gratitude spilling forth like water breaking from a dam as the darkness receded. An overwhelming peace washed over me, and with a final breath, I whispered, I forgive you. I forgive us all. In that moment, the barriers that had long held them captive shattered under the weight of my honesty, each memory glistening brightly, finally free to rise and find rest. But just as the tides began to part, something unexpected quaked through the ocean depths. A colossal wave surged, a final resistance attempting to pull me back into the darkness. You shall not escape this easily. The voice thundered, weaving through the air like a blade. With heart racing, I clutched the locket tightly against my chest, the warmth radiating through me. I have faced you, I declared, summoning the confidence I had discovered. I will no longer be haunted by the shadows of despair. Your truth is mine. And in that moment of defiance, the shadows began to dissipate, flickering off like embers in the wind. I was unyielding, now, me heart and soul grounded in their collective strength. I would share their truth, weave it through the tapestry of our lives, finding honor and healing through acknowledgement. As the waters stilled and settled, I felt the weight of history lift from my shoulders. A wave of calm washed over me, the remnants of the storm calming as I broke the surface into a world that was waiting for my return. The air tasted different, full of possibility. I had found what I sought, a connection to raw human emotion, a way to heal not only myself but to honor those souls forever tethered to the waves. Standing upon the shore, drenched in the pale light of dawn, I took a breath that felt new, alive, as I gazed at the calm sea. The memories echoed inside me, a symphony of whispers carried gently by the curling waves. Thank you, I breathed, feeling their spirits shining through my heart as I turned to walk away. A weighty peace settled within me, my own truth intertwined with theirs. I had faced the storm and emerged transformed, ready to share the untold stories of the WEST LOCH disaster, and to ensure that their memories would never fade, forever eternally bound. And in that moment, as I looked out onto the horizon, I dared to believe that the broken pieces of their stories and my own were now stitched together, forming a tapestry that would endure. For in the end, I realized, every voice, every story not only mattered, they were part of a greater symphony that defined us all. And with renewed purpose coursing through me, I knew our truths would forever echo against the shores of time, their haunting beauty preserved for all who dared to listen.